Welcome to the culinary industry. In this section, we'll be exploring the overall industry and the history that has brought us to this point. Whether it is a special occasion, just a night out, or an essential part of life, restaurants provide a service to the world. It brings smiles and happiness to people everywhere. Restaurants are also at the center of the national financial health. With over $782 billion in annual sales, the restaurant and food service industry's revenue is larger than 90% of the world's economies. Over 14 million people are employed in the industry, and it is one of the largest private sector employers in the United States. And it will just continue to grow, with an estimated 1.7 million more jobs available by 2025. This slide shows the latest statistics on career successes in the industry, listing 9 of 10 restaurant managers, supervisors, and chefs whose first restaurant job was entry level. 6 months is all you usually have to wait for a raise. And other things listed here, like average salaries. The restaurant and food service industry can be divided into two major parts or segments: commercial and non-commercial. The table on page 8 of your textbook breaks these down and explains the difference between restaurants, catering and banquet, retail, stadiums, cruise ship airlines, and breaking down the restaurants as well. So please be familiar with them. The restaurant segments come in the way of family dining, casual dining, fine dining, full service, quick service, quick casual, and food trucks. The way food is served is different from restaurant to restaurant. In recent years, restaurants have also become mobile. Food trucks are now a growing part of this category. Delivery options like Uber Eats, DoorDash, and others have grown. Takeout and to-go has exponentially grown this year as well. This slide talks about menu offerings, pricing, service style, ambience, and decor that really separate the restaurants from one to the other. Example, family dining, full service restaurants, service is at the table, guest sits while ordering, pays after the meal, and the menu emphasis is on families. Your average check is usually about $10 or less, and an example of a restaurant that's a family dining full service is Denny's. Casual dining full service, service is at the table, guests sit while ordering, pays after the meal, the food is cooked to order. Average check is $10 to $25 per guest. An example is Buffalo Wild Wings. Fine dining full service restaurant, service is at the table, guests sit while ordering, they pay after the meal, they have intricate dishes, tableware is high quality, the average check is $25 or more. An example is Ruth Chris Steakhouse. Quick service, guests order at the counter or window, they pay before eating. Take out, eat in, or delivery. Snack or beverage bars. Average check is $3 to $6. Example would be McDonald's. Quick casual restaurants. Guests order at a counter or window. They pay before eating. They get freshly prepared with high quality ingredient food. They receive their food quickly. The average is a little higher than McDonald's at $7 to $9. An example of that is Panera. Catering and banquets, where the menu is chosen for a group of diners. The food is delivered to the event location, and many restaurants have also added catering and banquet operations to their regular dine-in services. The retail segment has limited items including coffee, specialty drinks, and quick bites. This category of retail also includes vending. Cruise ships. Options range from casual dining and buffets to elegant dining and room service. Food service selection also varies from steak to vegetarian to children's meals and pizza. Cruise ships sometimes serve thousands of meals in one setting. Beverage service and small snacks for purchase are common on short flights in economy class, but on long flights you might eat a 7-course gourmet meal using real dishes and glassware. Recently, many airlines have stopped offering food to passengers. Airports instead have stepped up to provide food for travelers, with many food options now amongst the gates. I do know that major airlines do still supply you with meal options, even in economy class, when traveling long distances. For example, I went to the United Kingdom a couple of years ago, and British Airways not only served me dinner, they also served me breakfast. They also had unlimited alcohol and soft drinks for the long 15-hour flight. I, however, chose to sleep most of it. Now let's talk about non-commercial food service segment. That includes the things as schools and universities and healthcare facilities. This segment prepares and serves food in support of some other established main function or purpose. For example, the cafeteria at a local university supports the school's goal of educating students by serving them meals so they have the energy to participate in classes and activities. Healthcare facilities, hospitals, nursing homes, and assisted living centers all typically provide food service for guests and patrons. Business and industry. Many buildings provide cafeterias, vending machines, and executive dining to their employees of companies that work there. Clubs. Most are member based clubs have food service options. Examples include gyms, alumni clubs, and golf clubs. Government. Military bases and ships, government buildings, and correctional facilities are included here. Some locations may have clubs as well, such as an officers' club for the military. Within the non-commercial food service segment, is typically handled in one of two ways. In contract feeding, contractors are businesses, or self-operators that hire their own staff to operate food services. An example of a contract feeder might be Aramark, Sodexo, Let Us Entertain You. Self-operators um, might be an example of a state agency or a company that would supply, like, for example, Microsoft hires their own chef and kitchen personnel to work in the Microsoft office here in town, I believe, still. I don't think they've gone to a contractor the last time I knew. Hospitality refers to the services that people use and receive when they are away from home. Food service is a key sector in the hospitality industry as most people, when away from home, eat. in restaurants and hotels. Food service includes restaurants, retail establishments, and hotels. Lodging includes hotels, motels, and resorts. Event management includes stadiums, convention centers, and trade shows. Start looking at the history of food service and how clubs and restaurants evolved. The evolution of the restaurant and food service industry has been driven by the combination of social, scientific, and physical advancements for many centuries. The people of ancient Greece rarely dined out, although they enjoyed the social aspect of dining and often got together for banquets. Other establishments, called fatnae, catered to travelers, traders, and visiting diplomats. It is most likely that travelers brought standard fare like grapes, olives, bread, dried fish, cheese, and wine with them to the clubs. People ate while reclining on couches with performance of music, poetry, and dance to enhance the experience. Partly to show off their wealth, European noblemen instructed their cooks to use large amounts of exotic spices in their dishes. Because of their location on the Adriatic Sea, it was not long before merchants in Venice controlled the spice trade. They could easily get spices from India and sell them at a very high price to distributors headed north. Venice prospered as a seaport and bought and sold spices and other goods, trading with merchants bound for other destinations. It is said that the chef uniform was created during this time, as when conquering other lands was occurring, chef uniforms resembled that of religious robes to hide out. Chefs were prized to be won, where nobody wanted to mess with a religious figure, as what if their god was correct? The expansion of the world travel changed the mindset of the artists and philosophers of the Renaissance period. They adopted Epicurean lifestyles, showing great appreciation for fine wine and food. While the majority of the population was unaffected by this renewed interest in all things Greek and Roman, it did much to create the food preparation system we now call haute cuisine, an elaborate and refined system of food preparation. International trade also greatly improved the European way of life. For example, Europeans were introduced to coffee from Africa. The first coffee house or cafe opened in 1650 in Oxford, England. The new coffee houses were open, airy, and inviting. Bakers soon started selling pastries there as well. Unlike taverns and alehouses, cafes welcomed women, and the coffee shops soon made it acceptable to eat in public. Guilds were associations of people with similar interests or professions. They were organized during the reign of Louis XIV in France in an attempt to increase the state's control over the economy. Each guild controlled the production of its specialties and could prevent others from making and selling the same items. Two of these guilds were the chain de rôtissiers, or roasters, and the chain de traiteurs, caterers. Cooking guilds like these established many of the professional standards and traditions that exist today. And just for the record, the chain de rôtissiers is still alive and functioning today with a membership in this area of northern Nevada of, I believe, 150 members. So we can talk more about that later if you're interested. In 1765, a man named Bollinger began serving hot soups called restaureurs, meaning restoratives, for their health restoring properties. He called his cafe a restaurante, the origin of our modern word restaurant. His restaurante became very, very popular. People enjoyed having a place to go for a hot meal and good conversation with friends. The food service guilds believed Bollinger was moving in on their business and took their case to court. But the French government was under even stronger pressure to lessen the poverty causing social unrest in Paris. Despite the government's attempt to end the political unrest, the French Revolution began. When the French Revolution was over, large numbers of cooks and other guild members found themselves unemployed. They followed Bollinger's example and began opening restaurants of their own. Within 30 years, Paris had over 500 restaurants serving meals. Dining out on a large scale was born. The first Europeans to settle in North America were city dwellers, poorly equipped for farming. As more people immigrated to the New World to find their fortunes or to escape religious persecution, cities along the East Coast grew. Boston and New York became major centers of trade. As early as 1634, an inn in Boston called Cole's offered food and lodging to travelers. However, very few early colonial Americans ever traveled or dined out. Once they settled down, they rarely traveled more than 25 miles from their homes. When people did travel, they stayed at inns, often sleeping together in the same large room and even sharing a single bed. Not much care was given to the preparation of meals. If travelers arrived after dinner had been served, they wouldn't be able to eat. When America's high society dined out, they did so in style. Entrepreneurs in New York during the Gilded Age, 1870 to 1900s, opened fancy restaurants such as Delmonico's and the Astor House, so that people could dine and be seen in elegant surroundings. Dinners of up to 18 courses were quite popular. On the other side of the continent, California was in the middle of the gold rush. People poured into the area to claim their fortunes. With such a sudden growth in population, meeting the demand to feed so many at once was nearly impossible. Clever restaurateurs developed the cafeteria, an assembly line process of serving food quickly and cheaply without the need for servers. By the turn of the century, employment in the United States was at an all-time high. More and more people went to work in new factories, stores, and office buildings. People were therefore eating out more, especially for lunch. After World War II in the 1940s and 1950s, the quick service segment of the restaurant industry grew quickly. The economy is growing quickly too, and more of the population now also own cars. People began to stop for food more often during the day and as part of road trips. Entrepreneurs at the time began to look for ways to offer the food more quickly and at a cheaper cost to both them and their guests. Some even offered curb service, delivering the food directly to cars. The rapid growth of the national chain since the 1970s has changed the face of the restaurant and food service industry. It has caused a major shift in how people look at food and the social context of food. Eating out has become almost as commonplace as eating at home, not just for special occasions or as a convenience. In the last few decades, lifestyles have moved steadily towards busier households that no longer have a dedicated daily food preparer. Global connections via technology and the rapid growth of the international trade have also allowed restaurant companies to grow even larger. Some of the most famous American restaurant brands can be found in countries on many continents. At the same time, many guests have begun to expect local, sustainable options in their dining choices. So restaurants have also begun exploring how to offer menus and ingredients that satisfy these trends. The restaurant and food service industry is one that is often bound by tradition, but it must also be responsive to changes in society it serves. It provides the familiar and comfortable, while also working to deliver innovation and adventure. The restaurants of the 21st century does not differ from Bollinger's 1765 Restaurante in that they both restore guests' comfort. The goal is to provide guests with an opportunity to re-energize. An entrepreneur is a person who starts and runs a business. taking on financial risk to do so. The hospitality industry's growth is linked to the vision and dedication of entrepreneurs throughout history. These individuals believed in the hospitality industry and sought out opportunities to offer guests options. In 1837, two brothers opened Delmonico's Steakhouse restaurant in New York City. Within 20 years, the family owned 10 restaurants with the same name in the area. Fred Harvey tied his restaurant name to Harvey House to the growth of railroads. These restaurants started in the late 19th century, were built near railroad stops across the United States to take advantage of crowds of passengers. In the 20th century, quick service chains grew along with the nation's White Castle, McDonald's, and A&W were among the first companies to offer this style of food and service. Two other important entrepreneurs later in the century, Norman Brinker and Bill Darden, looked for ways to offer a full-service restaurant experience to the middle class at good prices. Brinker opened Steak and Ale in 1966, and Darden opened Red Lobster in 1968. Today, Brinker International and Darden restaurants operate restaurants around the globe under many brands. Chains today vary widely. Some are focused on fine dining, like Ruth Chris Steakhouse, presently in El Dorado. Ruth Fertile knew little about restaurants when she bought her first one in 1965. She eventually opened up dozens of restaurants around the country. Richard Melman is another important example of someone who paved a new path like Fertile did. His Let Us Entertain You enterprise has grown to more than 100 restaurants in the United States since the 1970s. Melman has specialized in appealing themes and high-quality menus with many styles of food and service. His range of restaurants goes from the Eiffel Tower restaurant at the top of the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas to Wow Boa, which features popular Asian street food. What do all of these entrepreneurs have in common? They started with just one restaurant. The success stories are simply amazing. Think about Starbucks as a recent example. This global brand was once one tiny coffee shop in Seattle. In less than 50 years, Starbucks now has more than 20,000 stores worldwide. The company's huge expansion was led by Howard Schultz, who started in the Starbucks marketing department. Now let's look at the roles of some chefs throughout history. Throughout history, chefs have been as critical to the growth of the industry as entrepreneurs. Today, the term chef is a mark of respect and distinction that describes a professional who has reached a position through hard work and dedication to quality. Two important figures that led the way to such a level of respect and admiration for chefs today are Carême and Escoffier. Marie Antoine Carême, 1784 to 1833, believed that cuisine was simply a branch of architecture, as demonstrated by his elaborate pieces, which were masterpieces of decorative art. He also perfected the recipes for many fine French sauces, placing them into 4 categories. Put simply, he defined the art of haute cuisine, which includes artful presentation, complex dishes, and refined cooking techniques. Many would agree that Carême's greatest claim to fame was training many other chefs who went on to become famous. They were his followers and continued his traditions in many fine hotels and restaurants. George Augustus Escoffier, 1846 to 1935, helped transition Carême's haute cuisine into more contemporary cuisine. He also established exact rules of conduct and dress for his chefs. Escoffier's staff always dressed neatly and worked quietly. He also organized and defined the role of workers in the professional kitchen, developing the kitchen brigade system. This system assigns certain responsibilities to kitchen staff. For example, Escoffier introduced the aboueur, or expediter, who takes orders from servers and calls out the orders to the various production areas in the kitchen. The industry has continued to produce iconic chefs who have added to the culinary arts and the business of serving guests. Here are a few of the most influential chefs of the 20th century. Fernando Point, known as the father of modern French cuisine. Point created lighter sauces using regional ingredients. Julia Child, a great as great as a personality as she was a chef, Childs popularized French cuisine and techniques with the American public through her cooking television series and cookbooks. Paul Bocuse. Following Fernando Point, Bocuse created lighter and healthier dishes that still reflected classical French flavors. He was also one of the first chefs dedicated to teaching other aspiring chefs. Alice Waters. Waters' goal was to provide dishes that used only seasonal local products at the height of freshness and quality. She is still at the forefront of sustainable agriculture and food service. Her restaurant, Chez Panisse, is a well-known operation in Northern California. Ferdinand Metz served as the president of the Culinary Institute of America. He led the U.S. Culinary Olympic team to 3 consecutive world championships, and he has offered the professionals countless lessons on innovation and professionalism. The roles of chef and entrepreneur have also frequently become blended, with many chefs investing in restaurants. Some have even created chains. Here are a few examples of contemporary chefs and their contributions to today's culinary scene. Nora Poulion owns the first certified organic restaurant in the United States. Restaurant Nora in Washington, D.C. More than 95% of the restaurant's ingredients are organic. She is also active in many conservation groups. Grant Arches, named Best Chef in the United States in 2008, by the James Beard Foundation, Arches is a leader in molecular gastronomy, a modern style of cooking that leverages science in its unusual preparation techniques. His restaurant Alinea in Chicago has been ranked among the best restaurants in the world. Thomas Keller, another chef entrepreneur. Keller is the founder of the French Laundry in the Napa Valley and Per Se in New York City. He is credited with revitalizing interest in fine dining with intricate menus and exceptional service. His restaurants have also been ranked as some of the world's best. Marcus Samuelsson, often seen today on television. Samuelsson began his career in New York City. He began opening restaurants in his 20s and has also authored cookbooks. He now has restaurants in many hotels and cities throughout the world. Nancy Silverton, one of the most respected bakers in the industry. Silverton has also won James Beard Awards for both chef and pastry chef. She started La Brea Bakery, which quickly became one of the largest bakeries in the industry, an example of a brand that's moved into supermarkets. This has been a brief list of history throughout the culinary arts to see where we've come from and perhaps to open your eyes to where we might be going. Lots of things have happened this year in 2020 with the COVID-19 outbreak that brings us to doing a lot of distance ed and hybrid education where you get more of these videos from me than real life lectures. But the restaurant industry, however hit hard in the beginning of COVID-19, has bounced back because the importance of food in people's lives is vital. Restaurants that didn't even feel a bump are your fast food chains who were poised to be successful in this outbreak because they already had packaged food to go. They already had drive-through windows. For them, closing their dining rooms was easy. In fact, many of them continue to have their dining rooms closed today. It's just as easy for them to serve you through a window and let you take your food out of there than it is to operate a dining room they never really wanted in the first place. The restaurant industry will bounce back from this and will become stronger and better. But dining as we know it today will change and has changed. And where it will go, I don't know. Perhaps in your next few years here at the Academy of Arts, Careers, and Technology, you'll see the changes. We'll talk about the changes. And maybe things will be even better and stronger for the food service and hospitality industry. There have been jobs added to the regular list of restaurant jobs. Most restaurants have added between 4 and 8 new employees just to cover COVID-19 concerns. So if anything, the restaurant industry is actually being able to employ more people because of this. More in the second presentation as we talk about careers in the hospitality industry.